All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of History Before Us, and I am in Turks and Caicos at a very special location. It's actually a national park that's here on the island, and this specific location is Cheshire Hall Plantation. As you see right here, it's recognized as the most significant of the pre-modern historical sites on Providenciales, designated as an area of interest of historical interest. This former slave plantation is preserved and managed by the Turks and Caicos National Trust. So shout out to the National Trust. And our guide today is Jonathan.
Hey.
So I've been communicating with Jonathan before I got here and said, yo, I'm going to be here in town. I would love to have a tour of the site. And of course, obviously he said, yeah, because we're here today. So Jonathan, you're going to give us this tour today, right, of the site. Before we get started, I always like asking people how did they get their interest into history? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So what brought you to loving history the way that you do?
Well, really, everybody should appreciate history because without history, we'll never know really where we are and where we're heading to. So everybody must have a real interest in history, especially tracing back to whatever happened in the past and how we can learn from them and how we appreciate their efforts and what transpired in the past would shape
Yes.
actually what we have for the present and for the future as well. So, I mean, it doesn't really take a genius to say appreciate history,
Right.
but everybody must. And I should say everybody must appreciate our history.
Yeah. So I'm gonna turn it over to you, brother. Let's
All
get
right,
rocking and rolling.
yeah, But we'll start over there by the
Okay.
gate. But I would like for you to maybe
Go over
take
here.
a video of the other cotton trees at the back because
Yeah,
that's better than the ones inside.
Yeah, let's do it. The weather is quite pleasant out here
Yeah,
today.
that's nice. Because it's been raining the past few days, so.
Okay. Now I read where Sea Island cotton.
This is Sea
Here.
Island cotton right here.
Okay.
I don't know if you can just maybe
Oh, so this is
get
it.
this one. Yeah,
Okay.
this is from the past harvest season.
Okay. Now, are there still fields and fields of this on the island
There
in some
are
places?
there are some cotton plants that are sporadically. We have some inside, we have some by the roadside, but it's not really grown commercially anymore. So this is called Sea Island cotton.
Well,
this is-
let me ask you this real quick. So in Florida, Sea Island cotton, there was a plantation in Florida. It's called the Kingsley Plantation. And Sea Island cotton was like one of the main crops that's
okay.
there. Can you talk about the connection between the Sea Island cotton there and what we have here?
Well, basically, the Sea Island cotton from here, the one that was harvested here, were introduced. So it would have been from that part of
Okay.
the U.S.
From Florida, okay.
Because basically the original owners were British Loyalists. So we're looking at the timeline where at the end of the American Revolutionary War, which ended in 1778. And so by remaining loyal to the British Empire, one of the owners, Wade Stubbs, was granted acres and acres of land in the Caicos Islands, for which he decided to plant and established a cotton plantation.
Okay.
So, and that was in that area, you know, where Florida is, and then they had the demarcation between who owns this and who owns that, which one is British, which one is Spanish, which one is United States, and all of that. So, I assume it would have been from that area also.
Yeah.
And then they decided to make a cotton field out of the land area here.
Okay.
So this is the same cotton that they harvested some 200 years ago, and this is Sea Island cotton.
Wow.
Believed to be one of the best quality cottons in the world, thereby commanding the highest price in the market at that time.
So this wasn't obviously the regular cotton that we would see in Tennessee.
Oh
or
no, it's really different. You notice how our cotton plants are like tall cotton plants.
Yes.
The ones from the U.S.,
Yep.
particularly those in the Carolinas or Louisiana or Georgia, those are low bush cotton
Absolutely.
plants. But these ones are tall cotton
Yeah.
plants.
It looks like it's
which
growing on
really-
trees, y'all.
yeah,
So here on the island, it looks like they grow on trees, like it's a limb. Yeah. All right.
And then later on, I'll talk about more of the history of the plantation itself.
Excellent. All right, let's do it.
What I know is originally there had been 284 slaves that would have been brought down to the Caicos Islands for to establish a cotton plantation. Well, particularly those number was for the Providenciales plantation, which would be called Cheshire Hall Plantation. It is believed that the slaves would have come from the Carolinas, basically because of the manner how they do the baskets is practically the same. They brought down their culture here, so it would have been from that part of the U.S. and they were brought down
So
here.
like the low country region of like Charleston,
Yeah, that area.
Hilton Head, that
Mhm.
specific
In
area.
fact, even grits, we don't really call it grits. We call it hominy.
Yeah.
And in Charleston, they call
Yep. Yep.
grits much the same, hominy also.
Yeah. So that's the beautiful thing about being in the Carolinas, because that's where I live at, is that there's a direct connection, of course, from the Carolinas here to obviously Turks, Bermuda, and other places. And so it's interesting
Basically.
to see that throughway that's there. Okay.
All right,
Yep.
let's go with the tour, guys. So this wall is actually
Golly,
original
that's
to
a
the
big. Look
plantation.
at that lizard.
Oh yeah,
He's huge.
that's indigenous. That's a curly-tailed lizard
Okay.
right there. So this wall is original to the plantation, and this is limestone, of course, the predominant rock type in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And the slaves actually built this. So this been standing for 200 plus years already, and we've been able to preserve a small portion of it.
Okay.
Over here, you will see an illustration of the plantation field. To give you a visual of the plantation field, it
Yeah.
will be this one based on the account by Daniel McKinnon, who was one of the voyagers from England to the West Indies in 1802.
Okay.
And originally, as it
5,000
is stated,
acres.
this originally Cheshire Hall was 5,000 acres. Well, the National Trust, we only got about 3.4 acres preserved by the Turks and Caicos National Trust.
Okay. How active is the National Trust here in preserving some of historical sites, or
Then,
even adding more sites to it?
yeah, the National Trust is really the premier organization that is really safeguarding the heritage of the Turks and Caicos Islands. So we are protecting plantations, heritage sites like this is of historical interest, even Iguana Island. So even the wildlife and environment, we take care of that. The caves in Middle Caicos, Turks and Caicos has jurisdiction over it. We actually manage the caves. That is open for tours as well. But of course, we always take into consideration preserving the place. While that is a good place of environmental place, like it's a cave, a natural beauty at that, it is also very historical. That's where the natives actually had that as a habitat also, as one of their dwelling places. They were the Lucayans or the Lucayan Indians, which were which were the original inhabitants of the country.
Okay.
Although unfortunately, going back to history, none of the Lucayans survived when they were completely wiped out by the Spaniards. You know, you remember that portion of history where they exploring
Yeah.
the New World. So unfortunately, none of them survived. So when the slaves came onto the island was actually uninhabited. And then they repopulated the islands. Well, because the natives have actually been eradicated
Prior to.
prior
Wow.
to them coming. So, and notice how even in the plantation field illustration, you will see how the slaves are actually standing in the field.
Yes.
A bit, because the cotton plants are really
Higher.
actually higher, tall cotton
Versus
plants.
in the
At
US
least they
where you're
didn't have to
constantly
stoop so
bending over.
low
Yeah.
to collect the cotton from the field. So harvest time is during the month of March. So that's when the whole plant would actually start popping with the white fibers. And so by September, we observe they start to flower. And that's where we get most rain, like moisture, which they really need a lot, no? And so they start to flower and then they form green buds until eventually those buds mature and they pop out with the white fibers.
When did enslavement end here on the island?
Um, Emancipation was declared here much earlier than in the United States. So emancipation was declared by the British Empire on August 1st, 1834. So it's as early as that. because the United States, I believe, through Abraham Lincoln, declared emancipation of the slaves 1864,
Yeah,
65,
63, and then
63,
yeah,
around that
yep.
time. So that was about some 20 almost years when the British Empire has already declared emancipation of the slaves
Right.
here. This is the well. It doesn't spring up water anymore due to the changes underneath. Of course, it's been 200 years. And notice it's limestone from top to bottom. This was the source of at least potable water for them at that time, for daily use, washing, cooking, you know. And this is in a very good location. Later on, we will see the master's kitchen, which is just a few steps away. And then over here, over that side, would have been like a storage place for them.
Okay.
So they had their crops stored in there, mainly corn at that time, maize, and then some other things that they have to keep. And then they had livestock, they planting crops, of course, for subsistence.
Wow. Now, they had overseers on the site as well.
They had like supervisors, overseers at that time. In fact, the 284 slaves, I actually saw the records of the 284 slaves. It would have just their name, their age, and then whether it's Negro or mulatto. Actually, so for example, it's Rose, 18, Negro or mulatto. But the difference is, of course, the Negro ones would be the darker colored individuals, and then the mulattoes would have some, a little lighter, fair complexion. And you can see from that time how they would have like a segregation of some sort, where the others would be working much in the field, and others would be here collecting water, fetching water from the well, doing the crops, planting, serving the master,
Yeah.
cooking, washing, and all of that.
Okay.
The original owner of the plantation was Thomas Stubbs. Now, later on, he sold the plantation to his brother Wade Stubbs. And Wade also owned another plantation in North Caicos. Um, the one that's called Wade's Green Plantation now in Belfield Landing in North Caicos. It is believed that the one in North Caicos was more successful than this one. Basically because the type of soil in the in North Caicos is better than the one in here. Well, at least better adapted to agriculture. And they received the most rain for the year amongst all of the Caicos Islands. So at least that helps.
Yeah.
These are replicas of the slave cabin and of the kitchen. Notice how the kitchen is a separate facility. So it's like a common area for them. So there'd be like rows of slaves' houses and then a common area for them to use, which is the kitchen. And it's outside of the house. And this is the average size of the slave's house.
Yeah.
We
go
can
in.
go inside.
Yep.
And then inside you will see some of the artifacts that are here, which the National Trust was able to retrieve back in 2003 when the National Trust took management of the place. Prior to that, this was an abandoned piece of land.
Okay.
And so we've been able to see here, well, this is made out of rubber. This was a recreation.
And this is what the enslaved would wear.
That would have they would have had the same footwear.
Okay.
And they would be making their own clothes, but it is believed that they would also have been given some hand-me-downs or some new clothes from the master or from the mistress of the house. Others may be familiar with this. Very neat.
Yep. That's the comb.
This is the comb, the metal comb, of course,
Yep.
for straightening their hair as
A
well.
lot of ears have been torn
I don't know.
up behind
I don't know
this.
how painful this is gonna be, but.
Well, my sister could definitely tell me because I heard the screams for sure.
And then these are some of the iron
Yeah.
for the clothes.
All right.
People would be in a home.
I was told about 1 to 2 families will be here, so it's really a small place, small space for a lot of people because the slaves would have been living outside of the perimeter, outside of the plantation perimeter, so they'd be outside of it living there.
Okay. Wow. And the kitchen was, of course, separate from the larger home.
Yeah,
You know,
and
in
even the
fear of it
master has the
potentially
kitchen
burning,
outside of his house.
right, in fear of
Yeah,
it being burned.
basically.
Yeah, burning down
Yeah,
the
so
main house.
they do some little cooking in here, but of course, much of the big fire cooking will be outside. This is actually buoy from the boat, which they made into pots.
Oh,
Very cool. And this is a hand corn mill. So they'd actually use this to grind corn
yeah.
to make grits, or perhaps some corn flour, make some other type of food. And
Now,
then notice the floors, dirt floor.
yep.
The roof, we call it thatch roof. That's actually dried palm leaves, which they use as a roof material, a very good roofing material at that. Arranged very nicely so the water really doesn't drip or the rain.
Really?
And you notice how it maintains the coolness of the inside of the place. A
Yes.
very good roofing material. Most early Turks and Caicos houses would have thatch roof.
Okay. So, as it relates to bedding, would they have any bedding, or
They would have used the same palm
material?
trees, the
Okay,
same
so they would
palm
use the
leaves
palm leaves
as
for bedding.
at least a mattress or so,
Okay.
of some sort. Yeah.
Was there any record on like when the days got started and things like
Yeah,
that?
they
Okay.
like the log, or the, maybe we can call it like a diary for the master. There had been, and they really start very early in the day, and then end when it's starting to really dark.
Okay.
I was told, well, I haven't seen the document, but I was told they would be off at least on Christmas Day.
Okay. So that's somewhat universal
Mm-hmm.
based on some of the places that I've been. But let me ask you, what was it like for men and women who perhaps were on different plantations here on the island? Were they given permission at some point of time to visit loved ones, or was it super strict?
I believe they were really allowed to do that
Okay.
until after they were completely free.
Completely free. Okay. And this is the sign for the slave dwelling, y'all. All right.
And then we're head up to the master's kitchen.
Are there any intact, quote unquote, big houses here on the island from the time period?
There are some ruins of houses in some areas. In Thompson Cove, we see some in the Bight. Even a similar well was found in the Bight area,
Okay.
for which we believe the plantation would have extended up to there.
Oh, wow.
So it's really a vast property.
Yeah.
And then this would have been part of a bigger structure, which was the kitchen for the master.
Okay.
And very conveniently located. The well is down there, the stock room, the storage room is down here. And then just adjacent to it is the master's house. And again, this is our cotton plants. You'll really be amazed how tall they are.
Yeah. This is definitely not how
Your
it is in the
typical-
States. No, not at all. Nope. This is Sea Island cotton.
See, island cotton, Gossypium hirsutum.
Here we go. The best quality in the world, Sea Island cotton. All right.
This is, oh, those are the flowers of it.
Oh, okay. I see it right there.
Yeah, they produce like this yellow flower when it starts to bloom.
Mm-hmm.
This is quite unusual to see in the month of May. But this is the flower. This is the flower that the Sea Island
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see that.
cotton produces.
Yeah.
Until eventually they'll form buds with the cottons inside.
Okay.
Now over here was the master's house. Once a two-story house situated, you notice, on top of the hill. A very good location for the house, of course, for the breeze. You can feel it. And away from storm surges, of course. And then I'm sure he can see his whole 5,000-acre estate from this vantage point. Imagine, on the second floor, he can see everything from
Right.
up top. This is, of course, limestone.
When did this structure fall? And just
We just met it like this, so it's been a constant, um, maybe falling off with the hurricanes that we have.
are there any pictures of it intact?
Unfortunately, no, we couldn't find any even artist illustration or an old photo of the house. We can only assume though that the structure on the at the back, which perhaps we can go there. This would have been the small office for the master. So this,
Okay. This right here
you
would
see
be an
this,
office.
the creases on the wall
Yes.
is similar to the creases on the wall that we have, which is the outside office, a separate building office. So this would have been his little mini office right here.
Okay.
But aside from that, we don't have a photo of the whole place itself.
Yeah, that would have been pretty neat to see.
Yeah, how grandeur it would have been. Now, limestone, they didn't have cement at that time. So you know what they used? They would have used conch shells.
Okay.
So they would have made lime, what they called lime. Like it's a sticky, pasty, cementy material that will hold the bricks together.
Okay.
So I know in other civilizations, they would have used mud and straw like the Egyptians. Or I know at least in some Asian countries, they would have been using eggs to fortify their structures, bridges and walls. But in here, they used conch shells. Of course, we're a coastal community, so we have a lot of conch. So they would have made use of the conch shell for that. So
As it relates to
the use.
archaeological digs, has there been anything in particular that stood out that you all have found here on the site?
Well, one of them would be the cannon and the cannonballs and the smaller cannon shots. We actually found them from within the vicinity. It is because they would have been protecting the property against pirates at that time. You know why? Because a lot of talks have been roaming around say, oh, there were pirates before, oh, it's not true, oh, it's just a myth. But we actually found cannons, we actually found cannonballs, which they would have used at that time.
Wow.
So down the slope would have been water some 200 years ago.
Okay.
So downtown now was actually water 200 years ago. That's actually where the smaller boats would come in. So when the cotton is ready to ship out, they put them onto the smaller boats. The smaller boats drive out to the sea where the bigger ship is waiting to export the cotton. The main client for the cotton at least was England. So they'll ship it out straight to England. I just don't know how many days, weeks, or months it would take for them to travel, like export the cottons from here to there. Perhaps, well, transportation is really not very modern at that time, so it would have taken them perhaps months.
So, post-emancipation, what did people stay on, living on the property?
They would have,
and were they getting a wage at that point? Like, how did that work out?
They really lived on their own, basically. They have very different livelihood after that. So they would have been thriving through the island with their own little crops and whatever else they did. Until eventually the island was under many different nations.
Okay.
They had the sisal industry at one point, and then they had one of the means of livelihood was whale oil.
Whale oil. Wow.
And then sponge. They did sponging as well. To as late as 1960s, they were doing the sponge industry. Although it wasn't really sustainable, so eventually it just died down.
So, post-emancipation, did these enslavers stay here on the island, or did some of them go back to their home country?
They just really stayed on the island.
They really stayed on the island.
But the master, the original owner, Thomas, went back to England. But his brother Wade, who eventually he sold the property to, remained on the island.
Okay.
Until emancipation was declared. So by around 1810, there was a great pestilence, boil weevil, channel worm, so production greatly declined. That's when, nearly destitute, Thomas sold the property to his brother Wade. and
At
Wade
at a
eventually
discount, I'm
owned
sure,
it. Yeah, I'm
because
sure.
the
And
boll
then
weevils, they also messed up
yeah, and then by
crops in the
1813 there
U.S.
was a great hurricane that destroyed nearly all of the crops. So following the events, by 1834, emancipation was declared. The only evidence of the piece of transaction between the brothers, the selling, is a piece of stone where it's inscribed W. Stubbs for Wade Stubbs, 1810, around that time.
All right.
Now,
Eli Whitney Cotton and Gin.
yeah, Eli Whitney is of course very famous.
Yep.
Whenever I ask my guests, um, do you know who invented the cotton? They always someone would say Eli Whitney.
Right.
So this is believed to have been the foot of the windmill that would have run the cotton gin.
Okay.
So the cotton gin was of course invented by Eli Whitney back in 1793. And I don't know if you noticed, but when they collect the cottons from out of the plant, it got some little seeds in them.
Yes.
So the main function of the cotton gin was actually to mechanically separate the cotton fibers from the seeds.
And it did such at a pace that, of course, human labor
Yeah.
was eventually just not needed for that aspect at all. It was just way more efficient. And
Yeah. But some historians say that the invention of the cotton gin was like a double-edged sword. It was somehow at least producing more at a faster pace, but they were requiring the workers at least to double up,
Yeah.
like more work more, you know, faster at a faster pace. So
wow, is this
yeah, it
canon
was
original
good.
to
But
the
yeah,
site?
and this is original to the plantation. So we actually found this within the site.
Oh, wow.
This is believed to be one of the two, perhaps three, cannons. This would have been pointing to the sea. Um, Later, I will ask Mary to get the cannonballs, because we kept it somewhere. And then the smaller ones, the cannon shots. The cannonballs would actually hit the body of the ship, while the cannon shots would target the sail, or at least scare them away because it could reach farther.
Wow.
There is a little hole in there. So that's perhaps where they put the gunpowder or like the light that would build up the pressure inside.
Cool.
So 1834, I had one guest from Texas 3 days ago, and she said that emancipation was really late in Texas because it didn't reach the news that slavery was actually abolished.
Right.
Juneteenth, I believe.
Yeah,
That's
Juneteenth. But the thing is, in various different communities, there were different dates in which they kind of celebrated it. So, like where I'm from in Middle Tennessee, we celebrate the 8th of August. So, and we still have celebrations for the 8th of August, and those started in the 1870s in Tennessee. And so they're still
So it's really
celebrated today.
based on
So it's really
when
based
at
on when the
least
word,
they-
you know,
yeah,
because we didn't have, of course,
the news
Instagram
reached
or
of
post,
emancipation
to
and whatnot.
say it happened.
Yeah. Now, this plaque was dedicated to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II in the commemoration of her Golden Jubilee back in 2002. Because Cheshire Hall is one of those important places in the community, like at least on Providenciales. So they decided to put one in here, have one of the events of the Jubilee celebration right in here. At one point, about several years ago, this was also one of the places where the Queen's Baton
Oh,
was one of the transfer places. So Cheshire Hall has always been involved with the island's community events.
how do the locals see the local history? Are they proud of the local history? Are there any type of heritage events that take place that also include this plantation site as it relates to
Right.
honoring the ancestors?
We actually have a lot of inquiries, especially schools. Students are really very interested in learning about the history and actually seeing them and actually stepping foot on, a very important historical site such as Cheshire Hall Plantation. So we really have a constant flow of students, at least teachers inquiring, and locals as well. In fact, every Heritage Day, which is a national holiday here, we open the plantation to everyone. It's a free admission, free for all. We have even roast corn and some home down experience with the food, local food, in one of the areas in here. So locals are very supportive of really preserving the environment. Although, of course, we need more support. We need more people to be on board protecting our heritage sites
Yeah.
down here. So this is actually like the lime that I was telling you about. So this would be the limestone, and they would have like a cement type thing, which is the lime.
Now, what was this, a dwelling, or what was
This
this right
was
here?
the washing area for the cotton. There's a cistern at the back of it.
Okay.
That at the back of there. Maybe we can go. So they'll be processing their cottons really after they pick them out from the field, after the seeds were separated. They'll wash them, dry them, and then they put them onto the cotton press and put them onto bales until it's ready for shipment. So that is the cistern.
Yeah, I see it right there. Okay.
So they collect water and then they wash the cotton and dry them and put them onto bales. Some of there's a cotton plant also right there.
Yeah, again, it's interesting to just see it here so high versus low, where we're used to it being at.
Imagine you're standing and you can pick the cotton straight up.
Yeah. Definitely doesn't make the situation any better that you can do it straight up, but
Yeah. A piece of trivia. I read somewhere, I forgot which magazine. Daniel Craig, 007 actor,
yeah.
he prefers his suit made out of Sea Island cotton.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, he's got high class.
He knows of course, he's
Yeah.
a superstar, so he has preference.
He has preference, that's for sure.
Going down the hill now, that is also an original structure.
Okay.
This was the office. And you will notice it's got the similar creases on the wall that we saw at the master's house. You can actually go inside.
Cool. Now, is this history taught in the school
Yes.
system here?
The National Trust is very active in going to the schools, promoting history, promoting Cheshire Hall Plantation, and that part of history. We actually are also going to the schools to teach them the traditional basket weaving,
Okay.
the straw plaiting, we call it locally. And so we're really trying to inculcate the importance of history, and especially this part of history in the children, in the school children at least.
Yeah. And you said this would have been the office.
The office. And notice how they didn't have AC.
Yeah.
So this would have been a good architectural windows
Yeah, because
design.
I see how the
passing straight through like
straight
that.
through. As you all
And
see
that
right
window
there.
is actually parallel to the door. So
Okay.
for easy flow, for better airflow, better ventilation.
Makes sense. It
And
gets
you
hot
see how
here.
this is still part of the original wood that
Yeah.
would have been part of the shelf.
I'm glad to hear that this history is being taught in the school system, because obviously, in the United States, we're getting hammered with all of these different.
Getting restricted too. No?
Yeah,
To,
yeah.
I, I always adore this. It's like a frame, no? A beautiful frame. And you see, even at that time, they knew their engineering. Yeah,
Oh,
they
absolutely.
knew
Yeah.
they're very ingenious, very innovative.
Any relationships with the continent of Africa, partnerships or anything like that, as relates to telling this story, or even in the United States? I mean, you said that a lot of these folks came from the Carolinas. So how has that cross communication been as it relates to telling a fuller story as well as sharing research.
Well, at least the National Trust is very welcoming with especially students like masters or those doing their doctorate degrees in history, Caribbean studies. We welcome them. They do archaeological studies here. They did some history. In fact, some of if not a lot of the information that we have right now are from them, who actually provide them with, who provide us with a lot of their research, a lot of their findings. So in terms of connecting, yeah, we have a lot of connections, even universities in the United States. One of our previous directors was actually an intern. She was doing Caribbean studies, if I'm not mistaken. And so she interned here. She learned about the history. She's a local, turns out. And eventually, she became the executive director of the National Trust.
Nice.
So we have that deep connection with universities, the academe, and we welcome them from the United States, from the UK as well.
Gotcha. Sounds good.
Historically, Turks people now also are from the wreckage, some of the ship wreckage, and then they stayed on the island. And then some of them also were salt trade breakers.
Okay.
They also stayed on the island. So some of them trace would actually be from Bermuda,
Okay.
for which, or the Bahamas, for which salt trade was really in and out with these two countries. So this is the only evidence of the sale between the brothers. So in 1810, nearly destitute because of the pestilence and the production greatly was affected. Thomas, who was the original owner, sold the property to his brother Wade. And the only piece of evidence of the selling of the transaction between the brothers is this piece of stone right here. I don't know if you can see it, but it says
right
W.
there. Yeah.
And it's S, T, U, this is B, another B, and then this is the S, 1810,
Yeah.
1810.
1810. So that's when he was like, look, little brother, these boll weevils done came in here, tore up the spot. I can get it to you on a discount. And after that, did the plantation run just as it did when Thomas was there?
Although hurricanes, the hurricane in 1813, the Great Hurricane they call it, destroyed just the plantation field. The plantation did not produce as much. It wasn't a very viable business after that.
Yeah.
And so emancipation later on was declared.
Okay. Gotcha.
This is cool. This is the line.
Yeah.
Oh, you can see it better from here.
Yeah,
because
right here you
when
can.
I was here, I couldn't see it much.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, right there. See?
So that's the evidence.
That's how they did it. The 1800s style.
Yeah. All right, so this has been an absolutely amazing tour. Jonathan is a very, very dope tour guide, very knowledgeable. But I always end these videos with asking people the why, right? Why should they support? Why should they visit? And for you, visiting Turks and Caicos, why should people add this site to their itinerary as well as other sites?
Yeah. I mean, visit the Cheshire Hall Plantation and other historical sites, because you see, Turks and Caicos is not just the turquoise water or the white sand beaches or just staying in your hotel. I mean, exploring the history is very important. You're actually connected to the country itself, not just the natural beauty of it, but the backbone of it.
Yeah.
You see what the people, the history of the people, the history of the place. So ensure that whenever you visit Turks and Caicos, visit these historical places. And the Turks and Caicos National Trust, which is the organization that is really spearheading a lot of the preservation efforts in terms of historical sites, national parks, even other wildlife, flora and fauna, and the environment here in the Turks and Caicos, support the National Trust. And there are many ways to support the National Trust as well. You can make donations, you can be a member of the National Trust as well, and just invite corporations or even yourself, be part of our research team, be part of our marketing team. We need more people like you, to spread the word and really just support heritage preservation in the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Most definitely, most definitely. So that's it. That's another episode for History Before Us here, live and directly from Turks and Caicos. Look, if you like this type of content, please make sure to subscribe and share. Add this to your itinerary, Turks and Caicos. Peace.